Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, Tarragon, you know what time it is? It's the last Thursday of the month, and that means it's time for the MiSTer Monthly News Roundup. And while the month started a little bit slow, it definitely heated up towards the back half, and it's wild to think April's already over, because honestly, I feel like just a couple weeks ago, I threw my Christmas tree in the trash. Granted, it's been a lot longer than that, but it just feels like this year is flying by, maybe because we always have fun stuff to talk about on MiSTer. And leading the charge, even though we don't have a test core yet, has got to be SRG320's demo of the 3DO core. If you know me and you know the channel, you know I absolutely love the 3DO. Even if it isn't one of those hidden gem consoles, there's so much fun to be had. And even if something like Killing Time is running at like 2 frames per second and it has some glitches, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm just excited to see it. And it means that soon, maybe in the back half of 2025, we'll be able to run an entire core testing series on the 3DO as SRG releases fixes to it, because we've already done it for the Sega Saturn for like the last 2 years, and it's been some of the most fun I've had on the channel. And honestly, because I love the 3DO so much and want more people to discover the library and find out that the 3DO is way better than you've heard, this is exciting for me. And honestly, it kind of just fills that gap in the overall library of MiSTer FPGA. For all of the consoles from this generation we have, 3DO would be a great addition, basically just leaving us with Virtual Boy as well as PCFX as the consoles that are left, unless you consider the FM Towns Marty a console and not a computer. But when I saw this was announced, I was absolutely stoked, and seeing that there's even more improvements on the way just 100% makes me happy, because it's one of those things. I've been playing 3DO since it came out back in the day, and I've always enjoyed it and definitely want to see more on MiSTer. And I mean, the more cores the merrier, right? We have basically everything on MiSTer FPGA now: PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo. I could just keep naming consoles all day long, and I want to be able to name the 3DO interactive multiplayer as well. So hopefully this goes to a test core soon. We can start testing some of the games. I know SRG320 said he has a few more bits of code to add into it before it would be considered at least feature complete but buggy, so hopefully we see that soon, and we're all playing 3DO on MiSTer FPGA. Now, a core that a lot of people have been waiting for was released this month as well: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time. And while most people in the comments still say that the Super Nintendo version of the game is the better of the two, and I would tend to agree, it's always fun to get a new arcade core on MiSTer FPGA, especially one that I get a lot of comments about people wondering when it was coming. It is one of those classic Konami beat-em-ups. You get that 4-player action, so if you actually have 3 friends in real life that play video games, I only have one personally, you'll be able to load this up at game night and get an awesome 4-player experience going, because that's one thing that the Super Nintendo version of the game doesn't have. It's just classic 90s Konami, super bright colors, a little bit of pastels, and a fun beat 'em up aspect. And even though the arcade version of the game definitely wants to munch those quarters, it wants to mug you in a back alley and leave you for dead taking your pocket change, it is still an absolute blast. And because we're not putting real quarters into MiSTer, you're not spending any money. Although honestly, it would be hilarious if somebody modified some sort of quarter injector to be able to actually plug into MiSTer, so when you put a quarter through it, it would actually give you a credit. It would be completely needless, but I'd love to see it. But this game is awesome. It does have a few sound issues. Go ahead and listen to the soundtrack sample, and I'll be right back to show you a lot more, but listen closely. Sounds pretty close, but there's something going on with the FM synth that isn't quite right, and one of the moderators in my Discord, the Cool Pup, actually found that when I showed him some footage of it, at least for me. It's one of those things, the core isn't final, it is a test core, but if you run update all right now, it'll come down, and I do recommend you run update all at least once a month. Now, speaking of beat-em-ups on a completely different arcade platform, SRG320 brought us Batman with the Rack Sound System RAX. It's one of those things, if you don't have the specialized soundboard on your STV when you play the game, you get absolutely no sound whatsoever, because the developers of the game invented their entirely new soundboard so they could have more bassy, more loud audio than the Sega Titan Video would offer. And even though I'm not sure if it sounds any better than the Sega Titan Video hardware, it's one of those things, if you don't have the code in the core, you're just playing the game on mute. And people weren't sure if SRG320 was going to spend all the time recreating a soundboard in FPGA code just so we could play one game, especially because it did have a Sega Saturn release that has audio. So honestly, we already had this game 100% playable on MiSTer in the Saturn version of the core. If you're not familiar, the Sega Titan Video is the Sega Saturn. It's just an arcade board that uses cartridges, not CD-ROMs, and a few games have a little bit better performance. But something like Batman, without that soundboard, again, you just have no audio whatsoever. But SRG320 is not going the extra mile. He's like going the extra 5K just to make sure that every single thing on the STV is working, including that rack soundboard. And it was one of those things, had he not done it, I don't think anyone would have cared whatsoever. But the STV is basically almost playing every single game near to perfect, just like the Sega Saturn core is. So it's always fun to see stuff like that actually happening. And if you've never played this game before, trust me, it's an absolute fever dream of a game. It runs so fast, it does everything absolutely at a 10 all the time. While it's not the best beat 'em up of all time, it is a ton of fun. And here's your second soundtrack sample, because if I'm going to talk about a soundboard, I'm going to let you listen to it. And I'll be right back with more news. Sounds exactly like it should sound. It's always fun when SRG320 incorporates fixes into core just for individual games. And speaking of which, the Saturn core got a bunch of upgrades this month as well, fixing some things in some retail games, but also fixing things in fan patches. Doom on Sega Saturn was a notoriously not great port, but fans have been going in and fixing it, and the patch is now at 0.2 status. And it had a couple bugs on the MiSTer FPGA core, so SRG320 patched the core to make sure that the Doom fan patch was working. And it's one of those things you would never expect to have these fan games all 100% work on FPGA code, because sometimes they do things with the hardware that no retail game ever did, just because they learned more as time went on. Same thing with Shenmue, this new demo for Sega Saturn showing what could have been. It was another game that had a couple issues in the core that SRG320 went and fixed up to make sure everyone could play and enjoy them. So it hasn't just been a great month for Sega Saturn fans as far as FPGA is concerned. Getting Shenmue, getting the Doom patches, and even getting the final release of Princess Crown as a translation. It's also been great just as a Saturn fan to get these new experiences. Doom having an improvement patch, Shenmue being in 3D on Sega Saturn, getting about as close as you could get to the game actually having come out back in the day on Saturn. It is just a fun time to be a Sega fan. 2024 and so far 2025 have been great. We've had so many great Saturn experiences. The Sega Saturn core, even though it's not on MiSTer FPGA, Dreamcast fans are getting a ton as well. So definitely make sure you've updated the Sega Saturn core, and if you don't actually manually install them, the core and update all is definitely going to be a bit old by this point in time. If you go over to the MiSTer FPGA Discord server and go into the Unstable Nightly's channel, you'll find the most recent Sega Saturn builds, both dual RAM as well as single RAM. You just copy those into the underscore consoles folder, load them up, and you have the newest update. And I definitely recommend you do that. Now to the Sharp X68000 front, there's either a brand new game pack that configures everything already out, or it is coming soon, because I have a preview version of it and I'm doing a video. You'll see it later on this evening, or maybe you saw it yesterday. Even my schedule sometimes fluctuates. It's going to take every single known working game for the work in progress Sharp X68000 core, configure it for you so that you can just go ahead, pick the game name, and start playing. And it's one of those things, everyone wants to see the Sharp X68000 core completed, because honestly no one really wants to spend the money to buy an actual Sharp X68000. We're talking multiple thousands of dollars for a good example. But in the meantime, when the core isn't completely finished, there are hundreds of games that you can play and enjoy like you were using real Sharp X68000 hardware. So this pack is basically configured with all of the games that are going to work and be fun to play. Something like Akumajo Dracula here is like 95% of the way to functioning. There's a little bit of weirdness in the heads-up display with some persistent graphics, but honestly, if I didn't tell you about it and you never played the game before, you might not even notice. And it's one of those things, the X68000 just holds people's attention. Everyone wants to play the game, so this pack, if it's out, it will be in the description below. If not, I will put a tweet up on my Twitter when it does come out. It's going to be amazing. And the Sharp X68000 has both MIDI as well as FM synth audio, so go ahead and listen to a soundtrack sample for 35 seconds. I'll be back with even more news for the month of April. That's the type of sound you're going to get out of the X68000 core with this new game pack, and there's just so many fun games in it. If you've never played Chorensha 68K, absolutely amazing fan-made bullet hell shmup that is going to test your reflexes every step of the way. And it's one of those things, there's so many hidden gems on the X68000. I'm pretty sure everyone knows Akumajo Dracula, people know Cotton, but something like Chorensha 68K, if you're not into bullet hell shmups, maybe you've never heard of it before, and I can't recommend you check it out enough. Now moving over to the arcade side of things, again, Wickerwaka previewed his Taito F2 core. This is an absolutely awesome thing to see. Even if we don't have a core to test quite yet, he is working on it. If the name doesn't sound familiar, he made all of the IREM cores, including IREM M92, one of the best arcade boards out there. And there is a ton of fun on the Taito F2, and it basically leads directly into the Taito F3, one of my favorite arcade boards of all time. So basically, this core is in progress. Hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have a test core out there, but I do want you to remember that even though every single game that runs on a Taito F2 might be on, air quotes, a Taito F2, there can be hardware changes between games, so it's not like a console core where if the core is working properly every single game would run. It does require changes depending on what title you're actually working on. And you'll see here Wickerwaka uploaded some test footage on his PVM just showing the core running. It has all of the functions included. It might still be a little bit of buggy going on, but otherwise this is something that's going to be coming soon, and honestly that is amazing because it's going to have the best arcade fighting game ever made of all time on it. Trust me, no game beats this one. It is an 11 out of 10 all day long and twice on Sundays. That is, ladies and gentlemen, Dino Rex. This isn't the Taito F2 core, it's the Dino Rex core, and I don't care what anybody says. If you never played Dino Rex before, maybe you don't understand the joke, but this is absolutely one of the most janky, hilariously bad fighting games ever made, but it is so much fun and it's so charming in all the wrong ways. I need a Dino Rex core in my life on MiSTer FPGA, and trust me, if you've never played it before, just give it a shot. You will not believe what you're playing in all of the best and worst way possible. Now we've talked about home consoles, we've talked about arcade cores, it's time to move over to handhelds because FPGA Zoomspots is completely writing his own Game Boy Advance core that we've had on MiSTer FPGA for years now to make sure it's 100% cycle accurate because he found some things that he could improve upon, so he's going back in and basically redoing the majority of the work, and in the end you're just going to have a more accurate Game Boy Advance experience. Now sometimes cycle accuracy means that a number would be off but a human wouldn't be able to tell, but it is impressive all the same, and it means that soon I'm going to be testing more Game Boy Advance games in testing videos, so if you want to leave me a list of games down below to test on the new core, I'd be happy to check them out for you. But as far as what I tested so far, pretty much everything is working relatively well. There's definitely some games that have some freezing and graphical glitches, and don't forget this isn't going to replace the Game Boy Advance core you have on MiSTer. We have all of the games already running. This is just FPGA Zoomspots going back in and making things even better. And it's also your next soundtrack sample because I'm not going to let you watch a Castlevania game without giving you some music, and I'll be right back. Sounds good to my ear, and honestly the Game Boy Advance has some of the best 2D games of all time in my opinion on it. It's awesome to see the FPGA Zoomspots is revisiting the core just to make it better for everyone, because I don't think anyone had any complaints about the previous core, but he decided to go back in and improve it all the same. Maybe after this he'll make us a Virtual Boy core. All jokes aside, I just always say things I'd love to see. Maybe Manifest Destiny, but we never expect anything, we're just thankful to get it. But as far as Game Boy Advance is concerned, it's just getting better, and that is always awesome to see, cores improving over time. Now speaking of MiSTer FPGA, but on the hardware front, you guys are going to want to know about this if you don't have one yet. Taki Udon has some SuperStation One updates, and he also said on Twitter, and I talked about it in a previous video last week, that there's going to be some more ready to ship stock of the MiSTer Pi coming in. Now this video is going to go out on 4/24, and he's talking about having new packs available around April 25th, so that should be either this evening depending on his time zone or tomorrow. So if you are looking to pick up a MiSTer FPGA, a MiSTer Pi, watch the Retro Remake site. I told you guys I would remind you every time there is a stock update, and it seems like there is one coming soon. But as far as my favorite news of the month, you know damn well it's got to be the 3DO core. Even if we're not testing it yet, we know we're going to end up with 3DO and MiSTer FPGA, and that makes me a very happy video game esoterica. For sure that we're done, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.